All right, we are diving straight into an explainer of a true crime case that is so incredibly dark and complex, it proves that the most chilling secrets can literally hide in plain sight. Today, we're unpacking a story that completely shook the Indian police force to its core. We're talking about deception, pure greed, and a family torn apart from the inside out. Let's get right into the facts and figure out exactly how this happened.
How does a completely natural death suddenly transform into a cold-blooded murder investigation 3 whole years later? Well, to figure that out, we actually need to start at the shocking end of the story. Because in March of 2026, a man named Ashish Shedmake walked into the Ramnagar police station and blew a totally closed case completely wide open.
So, Ashish sits down with investigators, and what he tells them is an absolute bombshell. He confessed that his father-in-law, Head Constable Jayant Balavar, didn't just die of natural causes back in 2023 like everyone thought. No, he was poisoned. And the culprit? It wasn't some criminal he had locked away. It was his very own 19-year-old daughter, Arya.
This whole web of deception stretched across 3 years. You've got the fatal milkshake in April 2023, and then almost immediately after, Arya marries Ashish in May. Fast forward a bit to 2025, and Arya is actually starting her police training, which leads us right up to that stunning confession and the arrests in March 2026. But to really grasp how we got here, we have to jump back to the beginning. Section 1. The Fatal Morning Milkshake. April 25, 2023, Chandrapur City.
Let's flash back to that morning. The day starts out completely normal. Jayant heads off for police duty. But right before he goes, he drinks a milkshake lovingly made by his daughter, Arya. Well, shortly after he gets to the collectorate's administrative building, he just collapses. They rush him to the hospital, but tragically he passes away. And here's the crazy part. The postmortem showed absolutely no signs of foul play. None. Arya weeps bitterly, and her family totally buys it. They genuinely believed it was just a sudden, tragic natural death.
Section 2. Plotting a father's murder. Uncovering the dark motive.
You've got to wonder, why would a daughter orchestrate something so heinous against her own dad? Well, it really came down to this lethal mix of teenage rebellion and some seriously calculated career greed. On one hand, you had the strict parenting. Jayant saw Arya hanging out with Ashish, worried she was going down the wrong path, and put some severe restrictions on her. Arya was used to getting her way, so she felt completely trapped. But the second motive? That was way colder. She wanted a compassionate ground police job, the kind given to families of deceased officers. Ashish had actually gotten one after his own dad died. So to Arya, her father's death wasn't a tragedy at all. It was literally an instant career. The way they actually executed this plan is chilling. Arya kicks things off telling Ashish to go find an untraceable poison. And Ashish? He makes a deeply disturbing choice. He actually contacts his 13-year-old cousin in Bhadravati to act as a middleman. That kid then connects him with a supplier named Monty, who hands over a poison specifically designed to mimic a natural illness. It is genuinely horrifying to think that a child was dragged into procuring a lethal substance meant to totally evade medical detection.
5,000 rupees. Yep, just 5,000 rupees. That was the incredibly low price paid to Monty for the poison that ended a dedicated police officer's life. It's just a chillingly low value to place on a human being.
Section 3. Living a double life. The facade of the grieving daughter.
What Arya does over the next 3 years is mind-blowing. You'd expect her to be paranoid or, ridden with guilt, but instead she builds this flawless public persona. To the rest of the world, she's this devastated, grieving daughter who is honoring her dad by becoming a proud Maharashtra police trainee, living it up as a joyful influencer online. But the reality? She was a co-conspirator to cold-blooded patricide, stuck in a marriage that was getting more toxic by the minute. While she was flexing her police credentials online, her hands were metaphorically stained with her father's blood.
Now, you might be wondering how on earth did the police miss this? Well, the initial post-mortem completely failed to detect the poison. But it gets worse. Crucial visceral samples were not collected properly, and they weren't sent for timely forensic testing either. Without natural degrading factors like decomposition or a long hospital stay, sources point out that this level of failure really comes down to severe police negligence. If they had just handled those samples right, Arya's double life would have been busted years earlier.
Section 4. A toxic relationship implodes. The catalyst for the confession. So building a marriage on a massive, terrible secret? Yeah, that foundation completely crumbled in 2025. Arya successfully starts her police training, which is great for her. But right at the exact same time, Ashish gets fired during his probation for indiscipline and misconduct. As their careers move in totally opposite directions, there's this massive power shift. Arya starts treating Ashish like a burden. She's completely dismissive. And these bitter arguments start escalating, just filled with nasty taunts and past resentments.
If I go down, you go down with me. That unspoken sentiment right there perfectly captures Ashish's destructive mindset. After one particularly vicious argument where Arya essentially just threw him away, he realized he wasn't useful to her anymore. He had reached a devastating, complete psychological breaking point.
Section 5. The Psychology of Patricide. Analyzing the Dark Mind.
To really wrap our heads around this explainer, we need to dig into the psychology, starting with patricide, the act of killing one's father. Now, usually, this is linked to surviving long-term abuse. But in this case, it was driven by control, greed, and a huge need for instant gratification. Arya wasn't fighting for her survival. This was a calculated move by someone whose childhood indulgence instantly flipped into extreme entitlement the second any boundaries were applied.
And that entitlement was fueled by what psychologists call moral disengagement. That's when someone convinces themselves that ethical rules just do not apply to them in a specific situation, so they can intentionally justify doing something awful. Through this, Arya and Ashish warped their thinking so much that they genuinely saw murdering a parent as just seizing a career opportunity. Seeing Ashish get a job after his dad died set up this dangerous, totally normalized idea in Arya's head.
Then, you add cognitive distortion to the mix. It's an irrational thought pattern where the victim isn't even seen as human anymore. Empathy is just totally wiped out. In her mind, Jayant wasn't a loving dad. He was literally just a roadblock in the way of her freedom and her new career. Just an obstacle that needed to be eliminated.
So when Ashish finally goes to the cops, it's really easy to assume his confession was because of overwhelming guilt or some sudden moral awakening, right? But the psychological reality is way darker. He was driven by deep ego injury, being totally rejected by Arya, and pure, unadulterated revenge. Ashish didn't come clean because he felt bad about taking a life. He confessed specifically to destroy the woman who bruised his ego.
What happens when unchecked desires, weak emotional regulation, and a deadly opportunity perfectly align? As we wrap up this explainer, you really have to ask yourself, how well do we truly know the people closest to us, and what dark capabilities might be lying dormant just beneath the surface?